everyone. Welcome to the discussion class on Learning Unit 3. My name is still André Stein. I am the lecturer on FIC 3704 and I will be presenting Learning Unit I, Complex Groups. So that you know, this class will be recorded as with all the other classes and it will be made available on my modules normally the day after the class or the first day of the following week. So especially if my classes are on a Thursday, I will either upload it on the Friday, my class video, the recording, as well as the PDF slides, and you'll find it under the announcements. So please tell your fellow students as well. Okay. Nothing changed here, so just on the left-hand side, if you can have a look there, the preferred method for us is to communicate via email. As I said in the previous class, then you can always refer back to the question you've asked and what the answer was. But you still, anyway, welcome to phone me or to set up a meeting with me either in person at the office in the Makkelneer campus here in Pretoria, or a online meeting via Teams. But if you need a small question, for example, on one of the principles on the module, please make use of this email address and I'll gladly help you. Okay, I showed this slide in my previous class as well. This is just the program that you need to follow, which you can find in Tutorial Letter 101. The exact weeks are in there. That's obviously just a guideline from our side. So if you're not on par with that program, please work out your own program so that you at least do not fall too far behind. Okay. Assignment 1 done. Hopefully all of you have done assignment 1 by the time that you watch this video. I said to you, assignment 1 counts 15% of your final mark. So obviously assignment 1 is a multiple choice question, which after the due date of the assignment closes, you can immediately see your mark. So one of the students emailed me earlier in the week, said to me, I don't know if I should continue with the module. I received 45%. I don't know, is it worth to continue? It's definitely worth to continue. So obviously, if you've got 45%, you're almost there, very close to a pass. So I think the important thing is at least you've done something, at least you know something, and now we can work from there. So you're more than welcome to, at that point, contact me and maybe ask for advice, how to go further and what else you can do to improve this. So we need to identify where was your mistakes and what else it is that you can do to obviously improve that mark, because 45 is not sufficient to pass, but still there's at least assignment 2 that's coming up and then the exam, but I don't think you can give up that easily. Okay, assignment 2, please look out for the announcement. It will be sent out soon with the details of the assignment. So assignment 2, just to give you a little bit of background, is going to be a bit different than assignment 1. So it's not a multiple choice question. It's going to be a written assessment, almost like an exam. Let's call it a mini exam. And that assignment will be on the My Exams platform. Okay, but the details will be sent out in an announcement. So it's going to be on the My Exams platform and it's going to count 50 marks, okay? But the assignment itself counts, or the contribution is 30% towards your final mark, okay? So there's going to be, the date is, look out for the dates on the announcement. The announcement will be sent out in the next week, and you'll see that there's going to be 2 opportunities, okay? So if you can't make the first one, you can do the second one. So the second one especially we've set for a Saturday. So and this is going to be different to assignment 1 as well. It's not going to be open for 3 days. It's open just for the 3 hours or the number of hours as in an exam. So it's open for a specific time on a specific day, and that will be communicated during the week. Okay, so I think it's important. There's still sufficient time to assignment assignment 2. So work hard and make sure you get a good year mark for assignment 2, because I think that can make or break you. Okay, just the rules, the same as the previous one. I've muted your camera, I've muted your mic. That's just, or deactivated your camera and muted your mic. That's just so that you know, we don't hear any other background noises from students. And I said here, the chat box is open for students to chat to each other. If you've got any urgent questions, you're more than welcome to raise your hand. If I can see you, just remember it's a little bit difficult because obviously I'm focusing on my slides. So it is sometimes difficult to see if there is a question or a hand raise. So if I do miss your hand, you're more than welcome. And that's actually what I prefer, is to ask the questions via email, and I'll answer accordingly. And that as well, just to go back to the previous slide, the previous slide, that's the email box, and we answer, or I answer all emails to this email box. I'll answer within 24 hours, obviously not over weekends. So I said in the previous class as well, if it's close to the exam or during the assignment time, I will then check the mails over weekends as well. Okay. So just a little bit of a summary of Learning Unit 1 that was covered. So that's Business Combinations, IFRS 3. So you can read this in your own time. For me, just a few things that I want you to remember and recap is remember, at acquisition, we will measure the assets and liabilities at acquisition date at fair value. So remember that one. So normally we will give you the carrying amounts and the fair value of the assets and liabilities. And then if there's a difference, you need to account for that difference. And always remember the tax effect. That's very important, because obviously if you've done the adjustment on the fair values, and you just do the tax on that, that's really easy marks. Okay, then I said in the previous classes as well, non-controlling interest, it's a really a important principle to understand, and normally it counts quite a number of marks, whether we ask a calculation or whether it's inside the disclosure of whatever statement was required. So it's really important that you understand non-controlling interest, and that you are able to calculate non-controlling interest. Remember, that's now non-controlling interest at acquisition, non-controlling interest at a later stage as well. So make sure you understand the basics around it, and we're going to cover a bit of it today as well. And then the same with goodwill or gain on bargain purchase. That's really important. And I think I said it in the previous classes. Non-controlling interest, gain on bargain purchase or goodwill will always be included here, okay? Whether it's directly with a specific question saying calculate non-controlling interest, or calculate goodwill or gain on bargain purchase, or it will be, we will ask you for a set of financial statements, and then you need to know, okay, we're busy with consolidations here, and it needs to be disclosed in whatever we are requiring. Learning Unit 2, the consolidation after the date of acquisition. You can read this in your own time, whatever I'm not covering now. Just remember always the basics first. I said to you in the first classes, the basics first, know the basics. If you know the basics, then you'll be able to answer any question. And I'm not saying you'll be able to get 100% if you know the basics, but you'll at least get between 40 and 60% if you know the basics, okay? So do the basics first, then you eliminate any intra-group transactions and balances, and then the same here. Please make a note in your head, deferred tax. So it's the same as that fair value adjustments that you are doing at acquisition. Remember the deferred tax. It's always important, because one can get strangled into this intra-group transaction as an example, and then you forget about the tax. And that's actually then the easy marks, because you just multiply by the rate, and you should just know which side it should go, what should be debited and what should be credited between income tax and deferred tax. Okay, prepare pro forma journals, blah blah blah. I haven't highlighted it here, but impairment of goodwill, that is always a very good, a very easy mark, because we will give you a set of information, and then you need to know that at each end of a financial year, you need to test goodwill for impairment. And obviously, if we give you a impairment amount or a adjusted or fair value goodwill amount at a specific time, then obviously it needs to ring a bell as well. Then there's a very, very good chance that there's obviously goodwill instead of a gain on bargain purchase in a specific question. And then to prepare consolidated financial statements. I'm going to cover it today again, and I said in the previous class, I refer to it as your skeletons. So please know the skeletons or the layouts, whatever you want to call it, out of your head, because we are going to ask financial statements. And if you know that, you score easy marks by just knowing the basic layout. And then exam technique, basically I cover it in all learning units by referring to you of what steps you need to take. Today again, I'll show you, for example, when you get a question, what is the logical order that you need to follow, or the process. And then later on in the year, I will have a specific class as well on exam revision and exam technique. And I think the principles that I'm giving you, in my mind, you can really go and take that and use it in your other modules as well. So it's always the same. Do the basics, make sure you exercise, learn from your mistakes, ask if you're not sure. That's the basic things in all modules that you should follow. And please, people, for me, it's important, make sure you work, okay? Make sure you work throughout the semester, because you don't just want to pass the module. You want to pass your degree and generate knowledge and skills that you can apply, whether you're working now or whether you will start working after your studies. So get into that habit to work hard and to exercise things and make mistakes and learn from your mistakes. Okay? So the objectives of Learning Unit 3 is to describe and identify different types of complex groups. So Learning Unit 3 is about complex groups. In Learning Unit 2, we only covered simple groups. Okay, then the second one is to compile the consolidation working papers of the different types of complex groups. And I said that in the previous class as well. We're not going to ask you for consolidation working papers, but this is just so that you understand what you need to do to be able to answer a question on financial statements and so on. Okay. The third one there, consolidate from consolidation working papers the information contained in the financial statements of the different companies in the complex group. So obviously you will have in a complex group more than two entities, a parent and two or three other entities. So you work with the one entity and the information of the one entity, and then the second entity, and then you bring all of that together. Okay? And then lastly, that's the important thing, is to prepare and present the consolidated annual financial statements of a complex group. Okay? You'll see, as I explained to you later on, it sounds, when someone says, okay, but now we're going to do complex groups, some students starts to stress. It's just the same principles all over again. It's like a building block or building a house. It was just a foundation, and now we're going to lay a few bricks, and then we're going to put a few more bricks. So make sure you know the basics, and you'll see it stays the same. There's just here and there an add-on. Okay? All right, Learning Unit 2 versus Learning Unit 3. I think I've already said that's the only difference is now we're working with a complex group. So in Learning Unit 2, there was, for example, a parent and a subsidiary. And Learning Unit 3 complex group, there might be a parent and two subsidiaries, or a parent and a subsidiary who is a parent of another subsidiary, or a parent with a subsidiary and an associate or joint venture. We're not going to go into too much detail on associates and joint ventures today because that's in Learning Unit 4 and 5, and we will cover it there. So just so that you know that as well. Okay, so Learning Unit 3, the learning outcome. So after this, studying this learning unit, you should be able to identify different group formats. As I just said, parent and two subs, or parent and a sub and associate, or parent in a sub where the sub is a parent of another subsidiary. So that's just to identify that group and to consolidate the procedures of that complex group. So that's basically what it is. Okay, so the group formats, you get single groups, like we set a parent who control a subsidiary. So that's very simple. And then you get complex group, where there's either a horizontal group or a vertical group. And you can get mixed groups as well. And luckily for you guys, it's excluded from the scope of FAC 3704. So we're not going to go into detail or actually look at all at mixed groups. Okay? Okay. Type of groups, we get horizontal groups. That's where a parent, A Limited, owns or controls two different subsidiaries, okay, on a horizontal line. So I will have control over B Limited and control over C Limited. So all you need to know there, it's exactly the same as when you do a parent with a subsidiary. There will just be two sets of unrelated non-controlling interests. Okay, I say unrelated because you'll see there's no, let's call it mix over between B and C. So you do A and B separately and A and C separately, and then obviously combine all of it. But it will make sense when I show you examples. Okay, I said there on the right-hand side, on the top right-hand side, the subsidiaries are independent of each other. Okay, then you get vertical groups. I think I said that earlier as well. That's where A Limited is the parent and subsidiary 1, B Limited, is the subsidiary. And then B Limited controls C Limited. And because A controls B, indirectly A also controls C because B controls C. I hope that makes sense. Okay. So that's just also called a subsidiary, and in this case the two subsidiaries are related. Okay, this is just the consolidation process, exactly the same as in the previous learning unit. So look there in step 1, combine the financial statements of the parent and subsidiaries on a line-by-line basis. In other words, as I said in the previous class, when you get a statement of financial position and you get a statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income to do, you add for subsidiaries 100% for the parent and 100% of each of the subsidiaries. Okay? Then you're going to do that elimination process, point number 2 of the pro forma journal. Then you're going to calculate and recognize goodwill or gain on bargain purchase for both subsidiaries. And then you're going to calculate and recognize the non-controlling interest. And you must always ask yourself why. Remember what I said in the previous class, because we added 100% of these subsidiaries, but we only own, for example, 80 or 70 or 60 or whatever percentage, we need to take something out at the bottom. And that we refer to as non-controlling interest. Okay? And then calculate and recognize the non-controlling interest. So I've just said that. And then point number 5, eliminate the intra-group transactions. As always, same thing. And then just remember the tax, and then you prepare the consolidated financial statements. So consolidation of horizontal group is, you've got now two subsidiaries. The consolidation process is exactly the same as I said earlier. And in this case, sorry, my tense is there. I'm not sure what is the correct one now. You do not have to follow any specific order, okay? In other words, when you do the consolidation, you can either do the the calculation of B Limited and all the transactions first, and then C, or first C and then B. When it's a horizontal group, the order does not matter. Okay, there's an example. So we've got three companies, A, B, and C Limited. Okay, A acquired 80% of B, and A acquired 60% of C. So there you can see this is a horizontal group. Then prepare an extract of the consolidated statement of profit or loss. Okay. Can you see on this extract of the trial balances, we did not give you separate line items, for example, revenue, cost of sales, other expenses, blah, blah, blah. There on the third line, we gave you profit for the year. So just check there, you've got share capital. Let me just show you quickly here. There. I just want to put my laser on here. So there, profit for the year. Okay? Profit for the year. So in this case, you've got only the profit for the year. So that's already the revenue, sales, blah, blah, blah. Because it's just a small example we want to show you. This is where we started. Okay, so there's the profit of the year of the companies. And now you need to prepare the consolidated statement of profit or loss. So look at that line. Profit for the year is 150, 160,000 rand for each of the three different entities. And I said to you, when it's a complex group, more than one subsidiary, you follow the same process, the same process. It's a parent and subsidiaries. So you'll start by adding the line items 100% of each other. Okay. I just want to see something here. Oh, that's the same example. Sorry. So here you can see it's two subsidiaries, two sets of unrelated NCIs, as I said earlier. Okay. So now at least we know we're going to add everything 100%, but then remember the non-controlling interest part we need to do for both entities. So on the left-hand side, because we asked the statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income, I'm just going to go back. We need to now see, was there any goodwill gain on bargain purchase in any one of these transactions that we need to account for? Okay. In the calculation, I've done both of them for both entities, but if you really clearly think about it, we asked for the consolidated statement of P&L at 31st December 2020. Look there. But A bought the shares in B in 2018 already, and then A in C in this year we're reporting on. Okay. So obviously, actually, if we do the statement of P&L for the current year, that was the only one where we actually was supposed to test if there was goodwill, gain on bargain purchase. Remember, we only work with the statement of profit and loss now, because that's what we've required. If the full set of financial statements was asked, then you need to look at both of them. But in this example, we did the calculation for both. But if you really think about it, if you draw your timelines, you will see it's not really necessary to do it for both entities. So there you can see. So let's look here. On the left-hand side, both of them ended up on a goodwill. So you can do this calculation in your own time. For me, this is just to show you, okay, I've tested it. So I know in the statement of profit or loss, there was no gain on bargain purchase, especially on entity C, which was relevant to the current year. Because remember, if it was not in the current year, both these entities, and there was a gain on bargain purchase, it will not sit in the statement of profit and loss of the current year. It will then affect retained earnings because it has to do with a previous financial year. So it will be included in the retained earnings opening balance. So in this case, luckily both goodwill for both entities. So now we can go. So just look there on the left-hand side, the red circle. I highlighted profit of the year so that you know in this question, although we ask for the statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income, you can start with the profit for the year. And the reason for that is, I just want to see something quickly here, sorry. Okay, I just thought there was maybe a hand. So the reason why you can start with profit for the year here is because, as I said earlier, the detail wasn't given. The revenue, cost of sales, other expenses, income tax, those individual line items weren't given. Okay, so normally you should you must start with that. But obviously this is just a small example, so the information is not there. Okay, so remember what I said earlier. So the 150, the 100, and the 60, that was given in the question. Okay, and because it was given, you obviously need to just add 100% of each one of those. And can you see what I said to you earlier, how easy it is if you know the principles, by just adding all those numbers that was given to you. If you know it's a parent and subsidiaries, and you know you need to line by line add 100% of each of the entities, you already get the marks there. Okay? And then we say, okay, but whoa, what did we say? After we've added everything 100%, we need to account for intra-group transactions. So let me just go back 2 slides here. Okay? In this line, you will see there was dividends paid. Okay? So this 40 and this 30 is obviously that was paid, and these A Limited received some of those dividends. Okay, because they paid it to the shareholders, and A Limited purchased shares in these companies, as we said in the additional information here. All right, so now we need to go and eliminate those transactions, and that's what we're doing here. We say, okay, the 40,000 that was paid out, obviously if the parent owns 80% of that company, that portion that was included in this profit of the parent, we need to take out. Okay, so we take out the intercompany dividends. So see there, it's the dividends paid multiplied by the percentage shareholding, and the same with the second subsidiary. All right. So what you need to remember here is when the detail was given, that line item would have sit in other income. So we would have had that deductions in the other income line item, because the parent, when they received it in their individual books, A Limited, they would have accounted for it in the other income line item. And now with consolidation, that other income, we will add 100%, and then we'll talk about, whoa, included in all these other income, there was dividends received from these subsidiaries, we need to take it out. Okay. Now we've got the total comprehensive income for the year. That's the 260. Okay. That's now for the group, for the A Limited group, because we've added 100% of everything, and we've took out the intra-group transactions. Now that's the total comprehensive income for this group for the year. But then remember what I said to you, because we've added 100% of the amounts of these subsidiaries, okay, but we only own 80% and 60%, we need to take out the non-controlling interest. If I'm saying take out, we basically do a reconciliation of the 260. So we say for the group, 260 is the revenue, or the total comprehensive income, sorry, not the revenue. Now we need to go and do a split of this 260. Can you see this? These two balances are the same. So we're going to do a split or a recon, whatever you want to call it. We will say the total comprehensive income attributable to, we first go to the NCI lines. Then we'll say, okay, let's take out the first subsidiary's NCI. Okay, remember what I said to you earlier? It's two total separate NCIs we're going to calculate. And then you'll say, okay, 100,000 was the profit of B Limited, but 20% of that profit belonged to someone else, to the non-controlling shareholders. And that's why we say 100,000 multiplied by 20%, and 60,000, which is this profit, multiplied by the 40% shareholders, the 40% non-controlling shareholders of the other entity. So if you add this NCI plus this NCI, you get to 44,000. In other words, 44 of the 260,000 comprehensive income of this group belongs to the non-controlling shareholders. So then the balance, there you can see the 260 less the 44,000 belongs to the parent, okay, to the owner of this group. So that's basically what you do here. And that's why I said it's important to understand non-controlling interest, because you need to calculate it at certain points in the statements to take it out. In this example, it's very easy because the 100,000 profit was given with no with no intra-group transactions affecting the 100,000. So in an exam, it will be a bit more difficult. We will give you revenue, cost of sales, other income, other expenses, income tax, and then there will be intra-group transactions maybe affecting this. So then you first need to go and calculate this. In this case, it was given. And then obviously that calculation multiplied by this rate will earn you a lot of marks, because you'll get the marks in the separate lines in the statement and then in the NCI calculation. And that's why I'm saying to you, it's very important. Some students miss this, and they will take this total profit of the entity or the group and they will multiply it by the NCI rate. That's wrong, because included in the 260 is the 150 of the parent. And these shareholders, these non-controlling guys, they don't earn anything or own any shares here. So they don't deserve anything here. So you can't multiply this 260 by the NCI percentages. I hope that makes sense. Okay? So if I can just stop there. This is obviously a very small, very simple example. If you can just look at that and you can see, if you really don't stress and you really just follow a simple process of adding everything together, the 150, 160, this is now given in the exam. It will be just more detail that you need to add and deduct it from each other. Eliminate the intra-group transactions, get your total, and do the split at the bottom. You will score very easily 70%. Okay? So even if there's a difficult intra-group transaction and you miss out on that, you can easily pass this. Okay? Consolidation of a vertical group. So that's now something different. That's now A is the parent of B and B is the parent of C. Okay? So you'll see the shareholders of B Limited, including NCI, must share in the profits of C Limited. Okay? That must make sense to you. Okay? Because B because B owns C and A controls B, obviously there's non-controlling shareholders in B Limited and in C Limited. Okay? Therefore, the profits of C Limited must be calculated first so that they can be included in the profits of B Limited. Okay? Other way to say this, so you're going to do the same process. Actually, you must forget about A Limited. You do the transactions between B and C. I've got an example later. And then you know, okay, included in B is already the profits of C. You've already accounted for the non-controlling shareholders in C. And now you do the, let's call it the final stage or step 2 between B and A. Okay, and then dividends received, if you look at the third point there at the bottom, dividends received by B Limited from C must be excluded from the profits of B Limited. That must make sense to you. It's exactly the same as the previous example. In this case, C Limited paid dividends because B purchased shares in C. They received some or all, if it was 100% shares of those dividends. On consolidation, we eliminate those dividends. So it's exactly the same. Okay, there's an example. A Limited acquire 80% of the shares of B Limited. B Limited acquire 60% of the shares in C Limited. I just want to see if I've got my note here. Yeah, I don't have it here. So you'll see later on horizontal groups, I said, doesn't matter if you treat B or C first. On vertical groups, it's important. You're going to look at C first. You're going to do from the bottom to the top first. So first between C and B, bottom to top, and after that B and A. Okay? So in this case, it's a parent, a subsidiary, and another subsidiary. Okay? So because the parent purchased 80% of the shares in B Limited, the NCI of the shares in B is 20%. That's the purple. Okay? First look here at the purple, this one. All right? Then because B Limited purchased 60% of the shares in C, there's a 40% NCI. All right? But then also because A controls B and B controls C, through that, there's also 60%, okay, of the profit, because B purchased 60% of the shares, 60% of that profits will be included But then there's again another 20% NCI on that as well. So 20% is the difference between the 80% that A Limited purchased in B Limited. All right? And that is on the 60% of the shares in C Limited. That's why I've highlighted that in a different color. So what I'm saying here is you're going to start from the bottom to the top, okay, and just look out in the, let's call it the middle one, there will be 2 NCIs, all right? And that's basically on a vertical group. This is actually the only difference that you will find, okay? So if this really confuses you and you don't want to get 100%, don't stress about it. But obviously, if this is what you want to do one day, you want to do consolidations, or you want to get a distinction, and you don't understand this, then contact me, okay? Because that's the only difference. It's not difficult. Right. So I showed to you here the same example as earlier, okay? There you can see everything was added 100% in the vertical group. You've excluded the intra-group transactions, the dividends, get to your total. Now you're going to do the recon or the split of your total. So you're going to calculate NCI. And this is the only difference. Okay, so this 3,600, because that's exactly the same as in the previous example. That's exactly the same. And this is the only difference. Okay, I'm going to give you 2 seconds to have a look at it. That's the NCI of B Limited with the shares they own in C Limited. Okay, but the portion of the 20%, in other words, between A and B, that's what we account for here. Okay, so why 60% included? 60 because B owns 60 of the shares, 60% of the shares in C. Now we've accounted for it, but then we say, okay, but whoa, 20% of that belongs to someone else because A only owns 80% of the shares in B. Okay, so alternative working of this is you do the analysis of owner's equity of C Limited first, okay? The profit given was 60,000. The parent in this case was B Limited. They own 60% of the shares, so 60% of that is 36, and the NCI is 24,000. Let's just go one step back. There's the 24,000. Then we say, okay, now we're going to do it for B Limited. So the B Limited's profit was 100,000. Just the same as the previous, the horizontal group. But now you need to include C's profit that belongs to this parent, B Limited. You include it there. You take out the dividend income from C Limited, and the total is 118,000, and you multiply this by the 20. So there, this 36 multiplied by the 20% is that only other difference that I was referring to the whole time. So this is just a different way of calculating it by using a analysis of owner's equity. Okay, get to the same answer. Total NCI in this case 47,600. Okay. There I've put the 2 disclosure of the horizontal group and the vertical group next to each other. And there you can see the only difference is the non-controlling interest. In this case is 47,600. Here it's 44. So it's only that 3,600 that I was referring you to. Okay. So if I can just stop there. So here you can see if you tell someone and you did not listen to this class or this to me or to the discussion, and someone tells you, now I'm doing consolidations and there's complex groups and you've got a parent with a subsidiary, but that subsidiary is a parent of another company. If you explain it like that, someone will stress easily and they will think, yes, but this is going to be difficult. But here you can see, just adding everything together, both sides, taking out the intra-group transactions, go and do the split here at the bottom between for the profit or the other the comprehensive income between the NCI holders and the parent. This is really not difficult, ladies and gentlemen. Okay? I hope you agree with me. Right. Right. Consolidation of vertical groups. In the next two slides, I want you to go and have a look at your own time. I was just given two examples here where you have, in all cases, a parent and subsidiaries, but the dates when the subsidiaries was purchased or the sub-subsidiary just differ from each other. There you can see 2018, 2020, 2020, 2020, 2020, and 2018. So just go and read this in your own time. This is just, I think I said in the previous classes, and I'm going to say again, whenever you have a group of companies, draw yourself a timeline and dot down when acquisitions take place and when certain intra-group transactions take place, because then it will make sense to you in what year you need to account for certain things. Okay? Because to give you just one small example, if we now in year 2, let's say last year 2024 was year 1, and now we're in 2025 year 2. Example 1, if in 2024 last year I acquired shares in your company and there was a gain on bargain purchase, I can't now in year 2 add that gain on bargain purchase in my statement of profit or loss for the current year. Because why? It's not a current year transaction. It has to do to the prior, something to do with the prior year. So I will bring it in my retained earnings opening balance. Same one, example 2, if last year was year 1, this year is year 2, and I tell you I bought the shares in your company this year, 2025, and I bought the shares and there was a gain on bargain purchase in the current year, 2025, then I need to bring it in because it's relevant to my current financial year. Okay, and my statement of profit or loss, I report on transactions for the specific financial year. Let's call it 1 January 2025 to 31st December 2025. Okay? Where with my statement of financial position, it's a balance at a certain point. So my balance at 31st December 25, that includes all the transactions from way back until we started. Let's say the company started in January 2015. Okay? That everything added together is my balance at that specific point. And the same with the statement of changes in equity. And that's why it will be included then, if we can refer back to example 1, if I acquired the shares in 2024, year 1, we're sitting in year 2 now, 2025. I purchased the shares in the prior year. There was a gain on bargain purchase. I will not bring it in the current year statement of profit or loss, because it's not relevant to this year, but in my statement of changes in equity, it will be included in retained earnings opening balance. Okay? And through that, it will also be included in my retained earnings balance in the statement of financial position, because that's a balance at a certain point, taking all of the history into account. I hope it makes sense. Okay? That's why we need to draw a timeline. And so here is just the second slide of this, is to show you what effects this will have because of the different dates here. So just go and read this in your own time. If you take one by one, so take the first column, look at the dates and look at the effect. And then you do this for all, and you'll see the dates is important and what effect it will have. Example 3. So same simple example as earlier. In this case, A Limited acquired 80% of B Limited. B Limited acquired 60% of C Limited. So what is this? It's also a complex group. There's more than one subsidiary, but in this case, there's a sub-subsidiary. And then in this case, we ask for the statement of profit or loss, and we ask for the statement of financial position. Okay? So what will we do? We will go and calculate, is there goodwill or gain on bargain purchase? In this case, I'm not going to go into the detail of all these calculations because there's just certain things I want to show you. Okay? So you now to calculate goodwill or gain on bargain purchase, you'll take the consideration plus your non-controlling interest. And if I can just stop there, based on the slides of the previous class, you can either measure non-controlling interest at the proportionate share method or the fair value method, and you should know both those methods. And we'll tell you in the exam which method the group applies, and you need to make sure you understand both methods. In this case, if I just look at that, I can see it's the proportionate share method. Okay, so to come back, consideration plus non-controlling interest less my share capital. In this instance, for C Limited, it gave me a gain on bargain purchase, and goodwill was on the second entity, on B Limited. So in this example, there was a gain on bargain purchase and goodwill. All right. To check here, both the acquisitions took place in the current year we are reporting on. We report on 31st December 2020. Both acquisitions took place in 1 January. So now we know on our timeline, we identified that it's current year transactions. Okay. So this, you can go and look at your own time. I've just explained the quick calculation there, but now I'm going to show you where are we going to use this gain on bargain purchase or goodwill. All right. It's the same as the previous examples I was given. All these together, add 100%, eliminate the intercompany transactions. One extra thing, this goodwill, gain on bargain purchase, you need to add here. So you've calculated, so that's why I said goodwill, gain on bargain purchase will always count a lot of marks. So you've done the calculation now. We will give you the marks for that, and here you can see where it was used. So I'm just going to give you 5 seconds to have a look at this. And then I'm taking a sip of water here. Okay, so the same now, you've got your new total comprehensive income. You do the split between the equity holders, the parent, and NCI, and there you can see the same NCI as that we've done previously. The only difference here is the shareholders, the NCI shareholders share in this gain on bargain purchase. Okay, so you just calculate the NCI on that effect as well. Remember, if this was not given as profit for the year, like I said earlier, and you would have done the detailed line by lines, you will add this gain on bargain purchase at your other comprehensive income line item, and then obviously it will also affect NCI. So can you see what I said to you? If you know the basics, you will do all of these, and that's very easy. And then you must remember, eliminate the intra-group transactions. Always see if there was gain on bargain purchase for the current year. If this acquisition took place in 2019, you would not have included it there. It will then go to your statement of financial position, included in the retained earnings amount there. Okay, so let's go to the statement of financial position. That's now the first time again. So just look here. We asked for the statement of financial position. I said in the previous class as well, just to have a proper heading to say it's A Limited Group. It's consolidated statements as at. The as at is very important because I said to you earlier, as at means this is the balance at that specific point in time, because it might be different on 25 December 2020 and it might be different on 1 January 2020. That's at a specific point in time. And maybe just to go back one step, for a profit or loss, that is for the year ended. So that words in a statement of profit and loss is very important, because that means it's not just something at a specific point, it's something for a period. Okay, so it's from, let's call this 1 January 2020 to 31st 2020. So all the transactions inside the year. That's why you will say for the year ended here. Okay, so those words are important. And it's important because we want you to understand what it means. So look here for the statement of financial position. The property, plant and equipment of the 3 entities was given. You just add it together. And there you've got your marks. So in the exam, we will literally go and say, you've got this, we give you a mark, we give you a mark, we give you a mark. Sometimes we will give you the cost and accumulated depreciation in the trial balance. So you will add the cost of all three entities and deduct the accumulated depreciation. Okay, and sometimes we'll go further. There will be intra-group transactions where the one entity bought PPE from the other entity. And then you'll exclude that intra-group profits, adjust for the depreciation, and so forth. Okay, but let's stop there. Now, if you just go back to the information given, okay, you'll see we asked for the statement of financial position. You should know share capital will be in there, retained earnings will be in there, investments, I'm not going to say too much because what did I say? That's obviously something we're going to eliminate on consolidation. Okay, so they will no longer be there. But because of that, there might be goodwill. All right? So that immediately needs to ring a bell. Because there's goodwill, because there's intra-group transactions, there might be changes in fair value of items. There might be deferred tax as well. That's not sitting here. All right? But you need to think of it. So now we go and we see, okay, in the statement of financial position, we've added the goodwill line item. Remember, we calculated this already earlier. This is just, again, the calculation. But if we can just go back, there's my calculation. Okay? So you can either in the exam do the calculation like we did here separately, reference it properly and write, for example, C1 here on top, and then inside you will have goodwill, and then in brackets C1. When I see the amount, I can go to C1. Or if there's space like this, you can just add it here. Okay? So in the exam, we will give you a mark, most probably for the description goodwill, and then for the calculations. Yes, you've got the consideration, you've got the NCI, blah, blah, blah. NCI percentage is correct. This was at the proportionate share method, blah, blah, blah. And there's the fair value of your assets. So it's consideration plus this is your NCI portion and this is your net assets. Okay? So you don't have to write it down like we did here if it's in a disclosure, but if it's easier for yourself to remember, or if you're scared that we don't understand your calculation, you can write it. But you waste time because we do not give marks for this descriptions in a disclosure if you do the calculation. Okay. So I said to you in the previous classes, share capital will always only be that of the parent. Why? Because the subsidiaries we have eliminated on consolidation. And then you'll do the retained earnings and non-controlling interest calculations. Okay? And there will be a lot of examples throughout the classes where we show you how to calculate this. I think if I remember now correctly, at the slides that will follow at the end of this class, there's examples where we calculate this and show you how to reference to those calculations as well. Not I think, there is. Sorry, there is. Right. In the previous example, these two dates were both in the current year. Now you can see this one is in a prior year. All right? It's in 2018 and the current year is 2020. Okay? We still calculate whether there's goodwill or gain on bargain purchase. It is, both of them. But now you will see this is included in the at acquisition reserves of B. All right? And this one, the goodwill will always be included in the statement of financial position. Doesn't matter what year, because remember, it's a balance at a certain point, including everything from the past. But in the statement of profit or loss, we only include the current year information. So this will not be in the current year statement of profit or loss, but it will affect retained earnings. It will affect the retained earnings opening balance in the statement of financial position or statement of profit or loss, statement of changes in equity. Okay? So, same thing here. I think we've covered this slide already. I'm not going to go in there. We've covered the goodwill. So, this is just again the calculation of the goodwill. So there you'll see it is included. And that is it. There's examples in the slides to come where we will show you how to calculate this. Where's my cursor? The retained earnings and NCI, because obviously that the gain on bargain purchase, it was affecting the transactions here, but we'll show you in the calculations in one of the slides to follow. Okay, other complex group structures that you get is where there's a parent, a subsidiary, and a associate, like in this case. Remember what I said to you, I'm just going to show you the structures here. We're not going to go into detail because in Learning Unit 4 and Learning Unit 5, we'll be covering associates and joint ventures. Or you can have a parent controlling a subsidiary, and the subsidiary bought shares in a other entity where the relationship is a associate or a joint venture. Just to see the following, subsidiary is consolidated at 100%, all right? And associates or joint ventures, we make use of the equity accounting, and you'll see that in Learning Unit 4 and 5, okay? We do it a bit different than with subsidiaries. In this case, again, because it is a vertical group, you will start from the bottom to the top. Okay? Okay, and this is now really a complex group structure where you will have a parent with two subsidiaries, but the one subsidiary also shares in an associate or joint venture, or where there's a parent in a sub, and the parent also have shares in a associate or joint venture. There's significant influence, blah, blah, blah. This, to be honest with you, if you just look at some of the old exams, we will most probably not ask you a question where there's a parent and 3 other entities. Okay, so you will see, I think in tutorial letter 3, there is questions like that, but this is more for the year module where there's consolidations, and that's for the people on the PSYCA stream. Okay. Let me go to the next slide. No, why doesn't it want to go? There you go. Okay, integrated question. I just want to take a sip of water here, stretch my legs. You can do it as well. I hope you're still listening. Give me just 5 seconds. Okay. So this is now an integrated question. Okay. So obviously, as with all the other examples, I'm not going to go into all the detail. I'm going to cover certain things that I want you to see. So the following, okay, the following are the audited statement of financial position of Summer, Sun and Fun as at 28 February 2017. Okay. What do I want you to see here is that's the year end. So you will draw your timeline so that you know the year is from 1 March 2016 to 28 February 2017. So that's your financial year. The formats given here is the AFS, the annual financial statements versus the TB. Okay, so normally in most of the questions you'll see we'll give you trial balances. In this case, we already give you statement of financial positions, in other words, financial statements of the individual entities. Okay, so if nothing else in the additional information contradicts this, okay, this is already final figures. But remember, not consolidated figures, individual figures. So we still need to follow the consolidation process. So this is just a different way we can give it to you. So remember, if we give you the retained earnings here, you need to know that's the balance at year end already. Okay. So if for whatever reason you need the retained earnings for the current year or the movement, that might be your starting point. Okay. And then what else do I want to say? Now I've lost track of what I wanted to say here. Just give me 5 seconds. Okay, maybe it will get back to me. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, we read the required at the bottom first. Prepare only the equity and liability sections of the consolidated statement of financial position of the Sanlam Limited Group as at 28 February 2017. Okay, so the information was given to you at 28 February 2017. Assets was given to you, equity and liabilities was given to you. But look at the required. Okay, the required said only the equity and liability sections. All right. So now you know, okay, most probably, except for there's anything else here that might affect any of these. For example, the retained earnings, if we say to you there was intercompany transactions on PPE and there's unrealized profit, remember, when we do the unrealized profit journal, it might affect on the one side the property, plant and equipment, but on the other side, income. And that will obviously through that affect retained earnings. So for now, we only look at this and we'll look at the additional information. Okay, I'm just going to go one slide further. We'll come back to this additional information in the slides to follow. Okay, so but when you go through the slides after the class, you can read this now properly. So where do we start? So exam technique, we always read the required to identify the information you will need to answer. We've done that. Okay, we've read that we only need to show the equity and liabilities at the following date. All right, there you can see at the bottom, only the equity and liabilities. We identify the group structure. Okay, we're going to do that now. We analyze the information given in the TB or annual financial statements. That is now that and the additional information. So we then go through that. And remember, that's why we first need to read the required, because if you read the required, then you know what it is where you want to go. And now you read this information and then you'll know, okay, I'm going to use this, I'm going to use that. All right. Then you draw the structure or skeleton of the financial statements. You populate the given amounts or the easy amounts, and then you calculate additional amounts to complete the required. That's now the goodwill or gain on bargain purchase and the intercompany transactions and so forth. Okay, so we've required to do the equity, and the equity includes the share capital. And immediately when you see that, what do you need to remember? When you do the share capital, it will only be the share capital of the parent. Why? Always ask yourself why. Because the share capital of the subsidiaries is eliminated at acquisition. Okay, when we calculate goodwill or gain on bargain purchase, you eliminate that. It's the same as the investment by the parent in the subsidiary. You eliminate that. Okay. Then you will have in the equity also your retained earnings, and that retained earnings consist out of the opening retained earnings plus the profit for the year less the dividends to give you the end retained earnings. Remember what I said to you? A statement of financial position is the balances at a specific point, including all the other transactions. And I know the statement of financial positions of these three entities were given to you, but remember that was individual, their individual accounts. So now we need to do the consolidating journals, in other words, to adjust those amounts that was given to you. If I can just go back, these amounts that were given to you, okay? So it's fine, you're going to start with them. Okay, but because it's consolidation, there's going to be adjustments to it. For example, maybe gain on bargain purchase or intra-group profits that needs to be eliminated. Okay, and then non-controlling interest. Okay, remember what I said earlier as well. That is now one of the line items. When you look at this information given, if I can just go back again, of the individual companies, you will not see a line item non-controlling interest. You will not see a line item goodwill. But when you do consolidation, you need to think about those things because definitely they will be included. And definitely they will count a lot of marks. So let's just go back. Okay, so what is the non-controlling interest I need to do? It's the at acquisition non-controlling interest. Remember when we do the calculation of the goodwill or gain on bargain purchase, that's the non-controlling interest there. But remember, that's at acquisition. Then after acquisition, these subsidiaries made profits or losses, okay? And the non-controlling interest guys, they share in that post-acquisition profits, okay? And they share in the current profit for the year. And then less the non-controlling interest dividends, okay? Liability section is, in this case, only short-term loans was given. I'm not going to scroll back again. You can go and look at that slide. Only a short-term loan for the parent was given, nothing else. But then you need to remember, okay, there's a possibility of deferred tax. Why? Because we have a group of companies. There will be intra-group transactions. There might be fair value adjustments, and then there might be deferred tax. The only thing you need to look is, will it be a deferred tax assets or a liability? Because in this case, we only ask for equity and liabilities. And if the deferred tax effects, if there was no other deferred tax given, was an asset, then you don't include it here. The same if the deferred tax was given as a liability. Let's say it was given as a liability of the parent 10 Rand and both subs also 10 Rand, and you add them together, 10 plus 10 plus 10. But then because of the intra-group transactions, remember that's now 10 plus 10 plus 10 is 30. And because of the intra-group transactions, let's say there was a 45 Rand asset. Can you see that the asset of 45 Rand less the liabilities, the total of these three entities of 30 Rand, gives you a net asset amount of 15 Rand. That means also for the group statements, there will be no deferred tax asset liability. Okay? So remember that as well. Okay. Group structure. The year end we know is February 20, 2017. And there, on the first blue block at the top, you can see this is what will gives you guidance on what this group structure will look like, okay? Because the investment in Sun by Summer is this, and the investment in Fun by Sun is this. So already you can see this is a vertical group, okay? Because S has share in Sun and Sun has shares in Fun. But we've done that now. And you know by now, it still stays easy. There's just a few or one or two different things when it's a vertical group. But it's a complex group. There's more than two entities in the group. Okay? Here I just want you to see that it's the share capital of the parent only that we're going to use. We know retained earnings will be included there. We know this is eliminated on consolidation. It will not be included. And there you can see the only liability here was the short-term loan, as I said earlier. Okay. We've done that already. Okay. So here you can just see in the additional information given, you can see that S acquired 90,000 of the shares in Sun. In the previous page, you will see that Sun has 100,000 shares. So if Summer bought 90,000 of the shares, that means they own 90%. And there we show to you, we give you in the information they control. Because they control, not because of the number of shares, because they control, it's a subsidiary. Okay? If we go to the next one, S also acquired control. So immediately you can see, okay, that's also a subsidiary, but this time of Sun. But they bought 24,000 of the 34,000 shares, and that is 80%. So that's the sub-subsidiary. So remember, if there's a sub-subsidiary, there's going to be that one thing that's different, that additional non-controlling interest that Summer has through this relationship here. So because it's a vertical group, you will always start from bottom to top. Okay? Okay, and because of the dates, if you look at the cloud there on the right-hand side, because of the dates given in the question, you can read this in your own time. This was a simple group, and then through later acquisition of the shares that Sun bought in Fun, it then became a vertical group and a complex group. Okay, now we look at the additional information. So when you get a question in the exam, you read the required, you will start with your skeleton, and then you start working with the additional information. Okay, in this case, Summer Limited acquired control of Sun by acquiring 90,000 of the shares when the retained earnings of Sun were 10,500 Rand. So now you know, when you do the calculation of goodwill or gain on bargain purchase, that was the retained earnings at acquisition date. Okay? And then I'm not going to look at the information here for now. The profits for the current year. Remember, in this question, we did not give you trial balances. We gave you the statement of financial positions at the end of the year. So this was just the profits for the current year. And you'll see later where this was used. Okay, this was used in the calculation of the retained earnings balances that we need to do, because we can't, remember what I said in the previous classes, for the statement of financial position and statement of profit or loss, we added 100% of each. But in the statement of financial position, the equity section comes from your statement of changes in equity, and there you don't add 100% of each. You add 100% of the parent plus the percentage shareholding of the subsidiaries. Okay, that's the only place you'll do it differently, because there, in the statement of changes in equity, you split it between the parent's portion and the non-controlling interest. In the equity section, you'll see there's your share capital plus your retained earnings plus your non-controlling interest. Okay, so the other thing I want you to see is there's now your intra-group transaction. Okay, so if you look here, point number 5, on 1 March 2016, Sun Limited, okay, which is the subsidiary of Summer, sold machinery with a carrying amount of 22,000 to Summer. So it's an upward sale of machinery. It was in the current year, and they sold this for 31,000. If they sold for 31,000 and there was a carrying amount of 22,000, that means there's a 9,000 profit. And then obviously that profit is an intra-group profit that needs to be eliminated. Okay, that's one of the intra-group transactions I told you earlier. All right, so then you will also see that there is, it's a depreciable asset, and on this date, the estimated remaining useful life of this entity is 3 years. Remember what I said earlier, if you've got a depreciable asset, you will account for that intra-group profit, but then you will do adjustments on depreciation as well. I've covered that in the previous class. Okay, and always when you see this, remember to do the tax effect as well. And then point number 6, at the end of the current financial year, it was assessed that goodwill that arose on acquisition was impaired by 510. If you see that already, you need to think, okay, this is actually a given. They tell me there is goodwill, so I know there's going to be goodwill, but remember, the asset section was not required, but there's an impairment, and this impairment is affecting my statement of profit or loss. Yes, statement of profit or loss was also not required, but the equity section was required. So the equity section includes retained earnings, and the retained earnings is a balance at year end, which includes all these transactions of the profits throughout the year. Okay, so look here, it's an upward sale of machinery, so there's an intra-group profit. I need to account for the tax here. Remember, just use the correct tax. This is now previous slides of mine where the company tax rate was still 28%. I'm not going to change that because that's the principle we're explaining. And then the additional depreciation because of that. Remember, in this group, the one company had this asset now 9,000 Rand higher. That's now the intra-group profit of what the real cost of the group was. And then we need to adjust for that depreciation. All right, and the tax effect on the depreciation. Okay, so I want you, when you get a question, to work through the analysis, the additional information given and analyze it like that. Okay, obviously don't spend 2 hours on this and try to make it. This is just for me to explain it to you, but you need to go through each of the line items in the additional information, and then you need to work out, okay, where is it affecting and what is it affecting? Sorry. So this was the information given, and now I just put a blue block on top of the asset, because none of the things of the assets is affecting of what was required, except for that intra-group profit, for example. Okay, that's affecting retained earnings, and except for the goodwill, or the goodwill that in this case we said to impaired by 510 rand, that's going to have an effect here. And if there was a gain on bargain purchase on one of the entities, obviously that's also going to have an effect here. Okay, so this was given. So already, if you start with your skeleton and you know, okay, this is the parent's share capital, and this is the only liability that was given, I need to quickly put that in my skeleton. Then you know, okay, I've got already 2 marks, or whatever the number of marks is that we've allocated. Then you need to know, okay, I must remember non-controlling interest. The lecturer said to me, non-controlling interest and gain on bargain purchase or goodwill will always be things that I need to look out, and that will not be a line item in the given the given information. So I need to think of them, and deferred tax might be here if it's not an asset. So that's things that I need to include here to go and check at the end if there will be anything that should be included here. There will always be non-controlling interest, except for if it's 100% controlled subsidiary. Okay, now retained earnings. So I highlighted that in yellow because that's now the first thing we're going to calculate it. We're going to calculate. Remember I said earlier, I'm going to show you. So in the exam, you will write retained earnings, and you'll either do the calculation next to it, or you will write, for example, C1, and you'll then take me to C1, to your calculation. Okay? So now you will start, when you do retained earnings calculations with your, just want to get my cursor here, with your retained earnings opening balances of the parent and the other entities. Okay? And in this case, you will only include Sun here because the other one was only included in the current year based on the acquisition date. You can go and look at the additional information in your own time. Okay, and that's why it's not affecting the opening retained earnings. And how do you get to your retained earnings? You use the balance given to you. Remember, we gave you, in this case, the balance at year end in that statement of financial position, less the profit for the year given. So in this case, we gave it a bit different. So you need to go and work backwards, okay? To say, if they gave me the balance at the end of the year and I deduct the current year profit, I know this was my opening retained earnings. And the same for the subsidiary. It was the year-end balance, less the current year, less the things that was at acquisition eliminated. So one of these was the current year profits, and the other one was the at acquisition that you need to take out. And remember what I said to you, for the retained earnings, for the things in the equity section of the statement of financial position, or for the statement of changes in equity, you need to multiply it by the rate that we own in this company. So multiply by 90%. So you'll do that, and then you'll go and add the current year information, okay? The current year profit of summer. And I know, remember, this is just a calculation where we split this for you because you need to know what makes up this balance. But in reality, obviously, if you did not add and deduct this, can you see that cancel each other out? Because this plus this will anyway give you the 196. The only reason why we split it like this in this example is because we give it to you differently. Normally, we will give you the opening retained earnings, and then you'll just add it, and then you will know you need to add the current year profit. Okay, I hope it makes sense what I've said to you. Then you'll do the same for summer, current year profit, and the same for the subsidiary. The subsidiary's profit given, multiply by the percentage share summer owns in Sun. Then I'm just going to jump here to the bottom. Fund was purchased this year. You'll go and do the same year. Okay. The fund's profit multiply by the percentage we earn. We own. But in this case, the subsidiary owns 80% in fund. And then we need to multiply by 90% because the parent, the big investor, owns 90% in Sun. And that's why we then multiply by 90% again. After you've done that, you go and do all these intra-group transactions, okay? So, or consolidation transactions. So the first easy one, goodwill impairment was given as 510. You'll go and deduct that. And there you will take out the unrealized profit. That was 9,000 Rand that we've calculated, the 31,000 less the 22,000, selling price less the carrying amount. We multiply it by 72%. You can do it in one line item or in two line items. This is just to give to get the after tax effect. And in this case, because it was an upward sale, this profit was in the subsidiaries books. So we multiply by 90%. And then we say, okay, but it has an effect on the depreciation as well. And we calculate the depreciation and the after-tax effect multiply by this rate. So this is just basically, we take out the unrealized profit and then we, let's call it adjust for it, because that unrealized profit realize over time as we use this asset. Okay, so now we've got the retained earnings amount of, look at the bottom, the yellow, of 255,000. We've done the calculation, we put it in our disclosure. Then we do the same, now the purple, for the non-controlling interest. So non-controlling interest, not going to go into too much detail because we've done all these calculations in the previous classes, but you can go and look at the slides and you've got a question. So you'll just do the at acquisition non-controlling interest plus the post acquisitions. Remember, because after acquisition, there's also non-controlling interest for the profits of the post acquisition profits. Okay, that's now all the years since at acquisition, and you'll do that. Calculate your NCI of both Sun and Fund Limited, and you'll get to the total. The purple 24,753, and you'll add it there. Now we will look at deferred tax. We do the deferred tax on the unrealized profit and the depreciation, and then we see, okay, because of the unrealized profit on the machinery, it's a deferred tax asset, a debit of 2520, and then because of the reversal of that, there's also a depreciation, a deferred tax effect, but that's a credit. Obviously, it's opposite because you start to reverse that unrealized profit now, and it still gives you a net asset. And because it's an asset, and in this case, we only ask for the equity and liabilities, there's nothing to disclose. Okay, and we're done with that one. So the key points that I wanted to cover is the group structures that you can get and the effects it's having on the consolidation process. The horizontal groups are consolidated in the same way as simple groups. Vertical groups from bottom to top. If you do it from bottom to top and you know it's also exactly the same, just that one small difference that I've explained in the beginning, then you'll see it is not difficult. And then pay close attention to the non-controlling interest attribution in a vertical group. Okay, it's just that one extra step that I've explained earlier. And that is all from my side. So ladies and gentlemen, If there's any questions, you're more than welcome to send me an email to fic3704@unisa.ac.za, and I will answer it gladly. And luckily, we've finished a bit earlier tonight, so I hope you've enjoyed the class. If you can maybe just indicate to me if you've enjoyed it, you can either show me a comment now, either in the chat box or any reaction. Thank you so much. And as I said in the previous classes, this will be uploaded to the My Module site. This video recording plus the PDF slides. And if you've got any comments on the class or suggestions that you want me to do in future, you're more than welcome to email me. So that is all from my side. I hope you have a wonderful evening further. All of the best of your studies, and I'm looking forward to see you in the next class. Just look out on the announcements for the classes. The dates of the classes will be provided on the announcements, and make sure you watch your announcements regularly for any other information that is important. Thank you so much.